Mr. President, Excellencies, in February, this Council marked 3 years since the Russian Federation launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a war that has brought immense suffering and instability to the region and beyond. On that occasion, this Council and the General Assembly adopted resolutions calling for its swift end and for a lasting peace. Since then, we have seen intense diplomatic engagement, but we have also seen an intensification of the fighting across Ukraine and at times into the Russian Federation. Ukrainian civilians continue to endure relentless bombardment in their homes, schools, hospitals and shelters. Critical civilian infrastructure is being destroyed with alarming regularity, and the number of Russian missiles and drones striking Ukrainian cities and towns has reached record levels. As a result, the past months have seen some of the highest numbers of civilian casualties since the war began. Overall, more than 14,000 civilians, including hundreds of children, have been killed in Ukraine. Over 36,000 civilians have been injured, and these are just the verified numbers. Civilians inside the Russian Federation are also increasingly being affected. Let me be clear, attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure are prohibited under international law. They must stop now. In Ukraine, access to water, electricity, healthcare and education has been severely disrupted. Massive strikes on energy infrastructure threaten to plunge millions into darkness and cold as they face a forced winter at war. The threat to nuclear sites remains deeply concerning, particularly at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. All parties must uphold their responsibilities under international law to protect their safety and security. The United Nations remains fully mobilized to continue our life-saving aid to all those in need. I call on donors to scale up their contributions to the humanitarian response plan for those affected by the war inside Ukraine and across the region. And I urge all parties to ensure safe, unimpeded humanitarian access to reach the most vulnerable wherever they are. Mr. President, as we mark the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, the latest incidents impacting neighbouring countries remind us of the real risk of further expansion of the conflict and the continuing threat it poses to European security. 3.5 years into this war, our position remains clear, principled and consistent: to respect and protect civilians, to mitigate the regional and global impact of the conflict, and to uphold the UN Charter. Recent high-level diplomatic efforts deserve recognition. I commend the dedication and political will demonstrated by the United States and others seeking to enable diplomatic solutions. I also welcome the direct talks between Ukrainian and Russian delegations in Istanbul, which have led to the return of hundreds of prisoners of war. They have also helped open channels to address other urgent humanitarian concerns, including the fate of detained Ukrainian civilians and abducted children. But progress on a much-needed ceasefire and a lasting peaceful settlement remains painfully slow. Every day of continued fighting undermines the chances for diplomacy to succeed and increases the dangers of further escalation.
Excellencies, as this Council recalled early in the crisis, all Member States have undertaken, under the Charter, the obligation to settle their international disputes by peaceful means. We cannot afford to lose the current diplomatic momentum, as fragile as it might be. The longer this war continues, the more devastating its consequences for everyone. I therefore reiterate my appeal for a full, comprehensive and sustainable ceasefire. A ceasefire that paves the way for a just, comprehensive and lasting peace. A peace that is in line with the United Nations Charter, international law and relevant UN resolutions. The United Nations is committed to fully supporting all meaningful efforts to end this war and to build a future of dignity, security and peace for all. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary General for his briefing.